It's time now for County-Wide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Brad Miller as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives here in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's County-Wide.
Welcome to County-Wide. I'm Paul David. Very good to have you in studio today. Jim Warbass with the Fort Tuthill Military Museum joins us again this year. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks very much, Paul. Nice for having us.
I think this is our third time with you here.
Third or fourth.
Yeah. Lon couldn't join us today, but Jim is here, and he's brought some new museum displays that'll be going on at the Fort Tuthill Museum. It's located in the Coconino County Fairgrounds in Flagstaff, which used to be Fort Tuthill. And Fort Tuthill has some history. Let's get into the show right away. What made you decide to begin the Fort Tuthill Museum?
Well, Paul, I served in the regiment after World War II with a bunch of very fine officers and senior NCOs who had spent 3.5 years in the Pacific, and some of them actually were in the European theater. We're not with the folks in the Pacific, but they came together after World War II when the National Guard of Arizona, the 158th Infantry, was released from federal service back to the state control. And that's when I served in the regiment, and I got to realize that these guys were really a fine a bunch of officers and non-commissioned officers. And as a kid, 9, 10, 11-year-old, I often went up to Fort Tuthill. My grandfather was General Tuthill, and so I tagged along and got to watch the training of the soldiers at Fort Tuthill before they left for World War II.
So you actually were at Fort Tuthill when Fort Tuthill was a training ground.
That's correct. And
okay.
But the memories as a kid of the soldiers training there, and then watching what they did in World War II, where they became very famous as the 158th Infantry Bushmasters, caused me to begin to think about the possibility of getting 1 or 2 buildings at Fort Tuthill and converting it, at least one of them, into a museum to perpetuate the history not only of Fort Tuthill, but of the units that served there. And so I began writing letters in 1996 to the county parks and recreation people. And I believe it was in '98 we made a presentation to the Board of Supervisors, and they authorized us use of one building, which is the building we're in now. And that building was the 2nd Battalion latrine. And when you're starting a museum, you take whatever you can get.
Right, right.
And we're now starting our 9th season at Fort Tuthill, and we think, and we've been told, we have one of the finest small military museums that anybody can see anywhere. And we take great pride in providing very detailed information on each of the exhibits. And both myself and Lon Wolf, the curator, are former service folks, and so we have some knowledge of what we're talking about. But the idea is to preserve not only the history of the 158th Infantry and the history that Fort Tuthill played in their training, but also to keep the people aware of the sacrifices that all the military make, all units everywhere.
Exactly.
And because right now, very little military history is taught in our public schools. And so we hope to use this not only to display the history of Fort Tuthill and the 158th, but probably more importantly to educate people as to what went before and the sacrifices that were involved by those who came back, and more importantly the ones that didn't come back. And the 158th Infantry 1st Battalion continues the name Bushmasters, and they served in Afghanistan in 2008, 2009. They had 24 wounded and 3 killed, all from improvised explosive devices. And then they had smaller units there in 2010, 11, 12, and there's some troops over there now 12-man teams that are training some of the Afghan folks. So the history of the 158th Infantry, which goes back for 148 years, is a very proud tradition, and it's one that that we focus on at the museum, and we're very proud to be a part of carrying that history forward.
It's amazing the amount of items you have in that small building. I've been there once, and that was a few years ago, and I don't think I've gone back since, and it was packed. I think at the time, Lon had a group of people going through there. Why Flagstaff? I'm trying to think why they would go there. I know it's cooler weather, but it's also the high elevation?
Well,
for training?
the troops in Arizona, the Arizona Guard units are scattered around the state, so we had a lot of the major units were in southern Arizona. Mm-hmm. And if you try to train in the desert of southern Arizona in the summertime, it's not a real pleasant experience. So they wanted to find a place where they could bring all the troops from Arizona and all the units from all over the state together, where they could have a cooler environment, and they could get more out of their training. And it worked very well because the Arizona Guard, prior to the time it left for World War II, had one of the highest training indexes in the United States Army for a National Guard unit. And that was because the senior officers of the Guard had all been in World War I, most of the ones, General Tuthill and most of his staff, and they insisted on training requirements that mirrored as closely as possible that of the active services. So when they were mobilized for federal service, they became the nucleus of a unit that was filled up with draftees and other troops, and that nucleus, the people that trained at Fort Tuthill, became the people that trained the other people that came in to fill the unit up to full size for combat. And so anyway, it's during World War II, of course, they became very famous as the 158th Infantry Bushmasters, and they were considered to be one of the very elite units in the United States Army. They operated independently, which meaning they were independent of other larger units, and they were the first Army unit ever trained in jungle warfare. And we'll speak briefly later on about one of the weapons that evolved from that training experience. But their patch, their shoulder patch, was a snake, the Bushmaster snake, which is found in Panama, a very deadly snake, coiled around a jungle machete. And that evolved from their Panama training experience. So when they reached the South Pacific, they became, instead of just a regiment, they became a larger unit, a regimental combat team, which meant that they had not only the infantry component, the 158th, but they had artillery and tanks, and they really operated like a small division. And they were large enough to warrant a patch of their own. And so that patch became very famous in World War II. And they were one of two units picked to spearhead the invasion of the Japanese homeland. And the other unit was the 40th Infantry Division, a California National Guard unit, which had fought alongside them in the South Pacific. So it was unique that the two units that were spearheading the largest invasion force that the world had ever seen, 1,800,000 troops, compared to the Normandy invasion in World War II of 180,000. That job to spearhead that invasion, to go in 4 days before the main body and take horrendous losses. The losses were expected to be 80 to 90%. Was left up and assigned to two very fine National Guard units.
Let's take a break right there. Well, let's take a break right there. Jim Warbass with the Fort Tuthill Military Museum located in the Coconino County Fairgrounds in Flagstaff. I'm Paul David. This is Countywide. We're going to take a quick 2-minute break, and we'll be right back.
Move over, AZ. Arizona's move over law requires you to move over or slow down when you drive past any vehicle pulled over with flashing lights. Any vehicle means emergency responders, roadside assistance, law enforcement, highway crews, even stranded motorists. Ignore the law and you could pay a fine. Remember, every vehicle, every time. Move over, AZ.
Sponsored by ADOT in partnership with the Arizona Broadcasters Association and this station.
Oh, those boys are much too much. Those boys are much too much. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We're going to beat them and bust them.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life.
Let's get a little bit rowdy. R-O-W-D-Y.
Take time to be a dad today. Call or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. Learn the body language and spot a stroke fast.
Here in northern Arizona and throughout Yavapai County, people count on Orkin Pest Control. With over 100 years of combined experience, nobody knows how to protect your home or your business from harmful or annoying pests like the Orkin Man. To start service, contact your Northern Arizona Orkin Pest Control. In the Verde Valley, call 567-5100 or Orkin Pest Control in the Prescott area at 77.
Welcome back. I'm Paul David. Good to have you in studio today for County-Wide. Jim Warbass with the Fort Tuthill Museum, Military Museum, located in the Coconino County Fairgrounds. A little secret that not many people know exists. Before we jump into some of the new items that you have coming into the museum this year, we're talking about Fort Tuthill. When did Fort Tuthill first open as a training ground for our soldiers, and then when did it close and why?
Well, Fort Tuthill was built in about 1929 at a cost of about $120,000. And at that time, it was the one of the few training facilities of any guard unit. In other words, most guard units trained on active duty facilities, but Arizona had its own facility just for the National Guard. And they trained using that facility from about 1929 up until they left for World War II in 39. And then after World War II in 47 and 48, they came back and trained for 2 years at Fort Tuthill. When they came back, they found out that, first of all, they were a larger unit. They came back as a regimental combat team with many more units attached to it. And also the weapons developed during World War II were such that the range capacities for firing the weapons was just not adequate. These weapons had much more required much more sophisticated ranges in order to fire. So they turned the facility over to the county, I believe, in 1955, but the last time they trained there was 1948.
Let's do this. You brought the Bushmaster in. You explained this weapon to me. Now I'm going to be holding up some weapons. Those of you who are listening on the radio, we try to describe it as best we can, but it's best to probably come back and either tune into Channel 2 and take a look at it or check it out on the website later. But go ahead and tell me this rifle I'm holding here.
The regiment was the first Army unit ever to be trained in jungle warfare. And they were sent to Panama to be a part of the defense of the Panama Canal, but also to establish the first jungle warfare school that had ever been established in the U.S. Army.
What was the problem with this gun originally?
Well, they at the time when they went to Panama, they were issued the 1903 Springfield rifle, which was a standard rifle and used by all our troops at that time. When they got in the jungle, and this was very, very dense jungle, they found out that a longer weapon the size of a full-size Springfield rifle was a little too long and too cumbersome, so they petitioned the Army to allow them to cut down this Springfield rifle to take about I think shorten it by about 8 inches, and modify it to what basically is a carbine-sized weapon, but it still had the same, fired the same 30-06 shell or round, and so that was the reason for that. When they were issued the M1 rifle, all of these rifles that they had were thrown in the Atlantic Ocean, and so there are very few, if any, of these old Bushmaster rifles around. That's
a shame. History right there, huh? What about this one here?
Well,
this
that
one
is
had quite a story before the show you were telling
That
me.
is a 1914 Lee Enfield rifle.
I want to make sure we get the stock in here, too.
Yeah, which was the rifle of the British Army in World War I, and I believe certainly in World War II. The thing that's unique about that is it has an emblem on the stock, and that little gold emblem has the word Suffolk on it, S-U-F-F-O-L-K, I believe, which is a town in England. And the Suffolk Regiment, which carried those rifles, was organized in 1665. And the history of these British units goes way, way back. And so the units then, each of the units, to my understanding, in World War I anyway, carried an emblem on the stock of their rifle that showed them to be the Suffolk regiments or whatever the name of the town was that might have, where they originated way back in the 1600s.
Be a real honor, I would imagine.
Yeah, the tradition is very important in the military.
We've got we've got a couple minutes before we have to take a break. Let's try to go through some of these here real quick. This one.
That is a German machine pistol, which is a submachine gun. In effect, it's one of the primary submachine guns in the German arsenal and used throughout the World War II. Very effective, and we will hope to have that mounted up in the museum shortly.
Oh, this will be in the museum, so if you're looking at it right now on the TV or you're going to watch it later, you'll go up to the museum at Fort Tuthill there in the Coconino County Fairgrounds and get to see them up close. They're really incredible. This one right here.
That is the German assault rifle, and that rifle was the first assault rifle, or the first rifle really ever created for the purpose of infantry firepower and assault. So that is their version of the assault rifle, and every other country that later adopted similar versions that gave the infantry soldier more firepower as opposed to a single-shot rifle.
I'm not going to pick up the other two, but up front we have the Browning.
This is a 1911 A1 Browning light machine gun. This was used in World War I and World War II and in Korea and to some extent in the early stages of Vietnam. It was there were two primary machine guns actually three, but the two that are most familiar with was the light machine gun here and the Browning water-cooled machine gun, which had a big water-cooled jacket on it, and people may have seen pictures of it in war movies. And of course then probably the most famous one that is still in operation, and we don't have one of those unfortunately, is the 50 caliber machine gun called the Ma Deuce. And so that's the only one still going, but these two have, this and the larger Browning have been phased out.
All right, we have to take a quick break, okay? Jim Warbass from the Fort Tuthill Military Museum located in the Coconino County Fairgrounds in studio today. I'm Paul David. This is Countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Move over, AZ. Arizona's move over law requires you to move over or slow down when you drive past any vehicle pulled over with flashing lights. Any vehicle means emergency responders, roadside assistance, law enforcement, highway crews, even stranded motorists. Ignore the law and you could pay a fine. Remember, every vehicle, every time. Move over, AZ.
Sponsored by ADA in partnership with the Arizona Broadcasters Association and this station.
Oh, those boys are much too much. Those boys are much too much. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We're going to beat them and bust them.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life.
Let's get a little bit rowdy. R-O-W-D-Y.
Take time to be a dad today. Call or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. Learn the body language and spot a stroke fast.
Here in northern Arizona and throughout Yavapai County, people count on Orkin Pest Control. With over 100 years of combined experience, nobody knows how to protect your home or your business from harmful or annoying pests like the Orkin Man. To start service, contact your Northern Arizona Orkin Pest Control. In the Verde Valley, call 567-5100 or Orkin Pest Control in the Prescott area at 775-8772.
Welcome back to Countywide. We've got a few minutes left in the program, and there's a couple of things we definitely want to get to. Before, I'm going to mention that you have a couple of buildings, a couple of new buildings. You're in like 900 square feet right now, and you're going to be moving into almost a little more than 2,000 square feet.
That's correct.
And that's going to be happening between now and hopefully next year when you open.
Well, we've got an awful lot of work to do and money to raise and everything else, but with luck, we might be in there by May of 2014.
So you need donations, you need material donations, all that good stuff to get these buildings
Well, what we're doing, we have a contractor who has volunteered to do the renovation of 2 buildings for us, and those contractors are going to be contacting their material suppliers, and I'm sure I'll be involved to some degree, and we hope to have the material gathered in sufficient time to move on with the construction phase so we can get it done by May of 2014.
If anything else, go see the Fort Tuthill Museum right now. It's really amazing, the amount of history that is inside that little building that you have right now. You're opening. You're closed all winter. You shut down all winter time, but you're open during the weekends, during the summer months, and you're going to be opening this weekend, May 4th and 5th. What's going to be taking place there?
We open for our 9th season on May 4th and 5th, and there'll be a flag-raising ceremony by Coconino County High School ROTC, and then...
That's 10 a.m. Saturday.
At 10 a.m., and it's C Company, the 158th Infantry 1st Battalion, will put on a very comprehensive weapons display of all current infantry weapons found in the Infantry Rifle Company, and we will have an outside display of most of these weapons that you see here. The weapon display, the outside displays are all free. There's no charge. The museum, we do charge a $3 admission for adults and children under 13. National Guard, active duty personnel, Army, Navy, Marine Corps are free. So the museum does charge because we got to find some way to feed the bulldog, as it were. And but the outside displays are free.
All right. So that's coming up this Saturday, Sunday, May 4th and 5th.
Right.
10 a.m. Saturday is the flag raising ceremony with all the free displays outside.
That's correct.
Admission normal into the museum on Saturday and Sunday. You're open just Saturdays and Sundays, correct?
Saturdays and Sundays until we get more staff, and we're hoping one of these days to be open 2 or 3 more days a week. Do we have time to just mention 2 unique displays that are going to be part of this display next?
If you can do it in 10 seconds.
Okay. Well, we're going to have a TOW missile system, which is a guided missile system, and a Javelin anti-tank missile system, which are both very, very interesting.
Okay, all righty. Jim Warbass, always good to see you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming up. Hopefully this year is a bigger year than last year at the Fort Tuthill Military Museum.
We're looking forward to it. We hope the folks come out and see us.
All right, that's today's Countywide. I'm Paul David. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you again next time.
This This has been County-Wide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Listen in each Tuesday and Thursday as we tackle the hot topics and talk to the decision makers across Yavapai County. That's County-Wide with Brad Miller and Paul David each Tuesday and Thursday on this Yavapai Broadcasting station.